Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro. 1, 2, 3.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro rolling out the red carpet, baby, for hour number 3. Ron Futrell from Channel 8 will be joining us here in a little bit. Covered Mike Tyson's entire career. This is the 30-year anniversary, by the way. The Buster Douglas-Mike Tyson fight, the very famous one, 42-1 shot, won that one. We'll get to that in just a few minutes here. But I want to talk about another Donald Trump tweet or retweet real quickly, if I may. So Donald Trump retweeted a scene from Curb Your Enthusiasm. And on the show, it was season 10, episode 1, right? And in this scene, it's Larry David from Curb who cuts off a motorcyclist, somebody maybe you would see in Laughlin. When I go to Laughlin, I see a lot of these motorcycle drivers. They're usually, these big buff white guys that are wearing these motorcycle outfits. It looked like the scene from Police Academy, when someone walks into that bar and you see a bunch of guys singing YMCA. That's what this guy looks like. Okay, I'm just trying to describe you what he looks like. So Larry David cuts this guy off. And in the scene, it's actually pretty funny. Instead of me describing it, I'm just going to play it for you. So here it is.
Just be more careful next time, okay? Will do. Okay.
So the conversation changes, and he goes, be more careful next time, because Larry David grabs a MAGA hat and puts on a MAGA hat, and then all of a sudden this guy's really nice to him. So the entire episode is Larry David using a MAGA hat as a repellent to have to deal with people. That's what the entire episode is about. But of course, Donald Trump, being the ignoramus, doesn't know that. So what does he do? He retweets that image of it, not understanding, not knowing that the entire episode was dedicated to a MAGA hat as a repellent to have to deal with people. But Donald Trump, either he didn't watch the episode, he didn't know, some idiot told him to retweet it, but he is responsible for his own Twitter account. Last I checked. The caption, by the way, that Donald Trump put up after putting up this...
Shame on you for not spending an hour of your time watching this episode, Donald
no,
Trump. Shame on you.
No, I don't blame him for not watching it. I blame him for not knowing what he's doing. By the way, the caption...
Brian, the reason he retweeted it is because Larry David has a giant social media following, and again, it puts his name at the top of the conversation.
Makes him look like an idiot.
It doesn't make a difference. It's all about controlling the news cycle and what is being said on a national scale, which he's done and he's continued to do, despite the fact that, yes, does it make him look like an idiot? Sure.
Okay, but the caption, JD, said, "Tough guys for Trump." That's what the caption said. And by the way, why would you make the argument that Trump needs followers? That's ridiculous. What does this have to do with followers? Donald Trump has a gazillion followers. It's got nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that...
It's about putting the name Donald Trump in someone's mind. That's all it's about.
I think there's better ways of doing it.
It's branding.
The entire episode
Donald Trump is arguably the best brander probably in the last few hundred years. I would say certainly in modern American history.
Well, let's see how good his branding
nobody
is.
builds their brand. Nobody has built their brand like Donald Trump. Nobody gets their name in the mind of people that don't even want his name in their mind like Donald Trump.
All right. Well, if that's your opinion, that's your opinion. I just disagree with you. I think,
Brian,
listen,
he's
president
of the United States for a reason.
Okay. Well, yeah, if you're president of the United States, then you probably shouldn't put up something and shade it out to be a positive when it is actually a negative. And the entire Curb Your Enthusiasm episode was mocking Donald Trump and using the MAGA as a repellent. Anyway, we have other things to get to. This is the 30-year anniversary today to the Mike Tyson-Buster Douglas fight, the legendary fight where Buster Douglas was 42-1, knocks out Mike Tyson in probably the biggest I think it is fair to say the biggest upset in the history of the sport of boxing. And the man joining us on the line right now has had at least that long of a career in covering Mike Tyson. He is Ron Futrell, and he is from Channel 8. Ron, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing?
Brian, thank you. Can we back up just a second on the Larry David Donald Trump thing?
Sure.
Because I got it. Okay, maybe Donald Trump has a better sense of humor than you're giving him credit for.
Yeah, you're right. He has a much better.
That's very possible too.
He absolutely understands that was poking fun, but he wanted to make the point that the MAGA hat brings people together and makes peace in the country.
Yeah, sure it does.
Okay.
Yeah,
there
sure
you go,
does.
Brian. How about that for a message?
So how about this, Ron?
Brian?
Is there a possibility, Ron, that Donald Trump might just be a little bit insecure and thin-skinned? Could that also be possible?
He has a better sense of humor than what you think, and he can poke fun at himself. I've seen him do it.
Yeah, he certainly never makes fun of anyone else. He just makes fun of himself. You're right.
No, he does make fun of other people.
I'll tell you this 100%. Who has a better sense of humor between any of us, including the president, would be Larry David. He is a genius. He's a comedic genius. So hopefully we can agree on that.
He's a leftist funny guy. You're right.
No, he's funny. He's a funny guy. Yeah, he's a
leftist funny guy.
He's not
as funny.
Curb and Seinfeld
but he's okay.
Curb and Seinfeld are two of arguably the most successful comedy shows in the history of television. That's just a fact. That's just a fact.
Go up there.
Yeah, that's just a fact. He has massive ratings, as Trump would say.
Portlandia. So I'm going to put Fred Armisen. I'm going to put Fred Armisen in there because I love Portlandia.
All right. Fair enough.
I've never actually seen Portlandia, Ron.
Fair enough,
I've
Ron.
heard very good things.
But the reason why we wanted you on the show today, Ron, besides defending Donald Trump, was the fact that you've done a great job covering the sport of boxing, particularly here in Las Vegas, for a very, very long time. You covered Mike Tyson in that era as well, and I'm very jealous about that. This is the 30-year anniversary, as I'm sure you know, when Buster Douglas, when Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson. What do you remember about that day, Ron, that you can share with us?
Okay, it was a Saturday night in Japan, and I don't remember that night in Japan because nobody cared about the fight. It was a non-factor. It was like, okay, why is he even taking this fight? 42-1 and Mike 36-1, depending on where you shopped. It was a very high number on the odds where Tyson was so heavily favored. And it was. I remember going to bed that night and going, okay, I'll wake up in the morning and see Tyson in a third-round knockout.
Right.
He's lucky it'll last 2 or 3 rounds.
Right, like everybody else.
And I woke up that Sunday morning after the fight was over and looked at the paper and said, what the – are you kidding me? And this was invincible Mike Tyson. This was the guy who nobody could beat. And there was all sorts of issues. Paramount was he just was unprepared, and I've talked to him about it since. And he just says, I went over there and I thought I had this fight won. Thought I was invincible. It was not the case. Very, very beatable in that case. And Buster Douglas was in the right place at the right time. And it wasn't that Buster Douglas was any great fighter, but we had seen him here in Vegas because I got here in '84, so he started here in '86 and saw him just fighting and winning and fighting. Just, if you lasted around, you were lucky with him. If you got into the second round, you were remarkable.
Yeah.
But a 10th round knockout was phenomenal to have it go the other direction.
Ron, do you remember? Ron, do you remember the first time you spoke with Mike Tyson after that fight? Do you recall an interview that you can share with us?
No, I can't. Not right after that fight, the first one after, because it wasn't long. Okay, then what happened is where all the dominoes fell.
Right.
Was then Buster Douglas later that year in October of 1990 set up a fight at the new Mirage. Okay, this was the second fight at the Mirage. Might have been the third, but I think it was probably the second because the first fight there was 30 years ago. Last year was November of '89, and that was the third fight between Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran. No mas, that fight. It was the third in that, and that was a blowout fight. But that was the opening of the Mirage. And so now they had the area just out back of the Mirage, so just west of it, of the convention area in the Mirage, where now it's a parking area and all sorts of stuff there. But anyway, they had a ring set up there, a small arena outdoors, and they had the Buster Douglas Evander Holyfield fight, which I could go on and on about that one. I could tell you a ton of stories with that one, how crazy that fight was, and the lack of preparation by Buster Douglas. Then it set up, Holyfield won that fight in what was, I believe, a second or third round knockout that was ridiculous because Buster Douglas now pulled a Mike Tyson, and he wasn't prepared.
Right. Mm-hmm.
No way prepared. He was out at Shadow Creek Golf Course sitting out there with the koalas and the kangaroos because it was a wildlife refuge that Steve Wynn had built out there, and he literally was out there just kicking back, putting where he was supposed to be running and training, and he made $25 million for that fight. Buster Douglas did, which was the largest purse in the history of boxing. Phenomenal amount of money to do that. So then it set up Tyson Holyfield 1, which was supposed to happen at Caesars in 91, 92, right around there somewhere. And then Tyson gets convicted, goes to prison 3 years later.
Right, we remember that. Out. You know, I wanted to ask you about that too, but if I could just go back quickly to Buster Douglas, because I want to get your thoughts on this. I don't think people realize this about Buster Douglas. You know, he was fighting 3 weeks after the death of his mother.
Oh, no, that's right, too.
Yeah, so he was fighting, obviously, with a lot of emotion. Clearly, it was the biggest moment in his life, the biggest moment in his career. And he's talked a lot about that, about how he was fighting for his mom, and his mom was in his mind. And then in Mike Tyson's mind was, you know, cocaine, at least in his system. The crap that was going on with Robin Givens, the stuff that was going on with Don King and Cuss and all that stuff. And I mean, Mike Tyson was just, I mean, I don't even know how the guy was even able to get into the ring with everything that was going on in his life, right, Ron?
Yes, and all of those things. Plus, he just went over there and said that he just partook of women over there, which Mike Tyson had a propensity to do. And
yes.
I use the word had only because I don't know whether he's still. I don't think he does anymore. Seems to be faithfully married. He loves his wife now at this point. But back then, when he was a single dude, it was nuts. Some of the stories that you heard about Mike Tyson in town. So I'm sure over in Japan.
What did he do, Ron? Because I mean, without getting into too much into detail, but you covered this guy's career in Las Vegas. You went to a ton of Tyson fights. Give me like a story that you heard that Mike Tyson just completely out of control at night in Vegas. Like, what did he do?
No, he would. Well, usually they weren't spinning Vegas. It was Pahrump. And it really was. It was. He would go with his. I knew one of his bodyguards.
Yeah.
So they would load up limos, and they would take him, and they would rent out a house of ill repute in Pahrump.
Could you expand on? Okay, there we go.
Whorehouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, you can say that.
They would rent the place out, and it's just they would all, for the legal. All this is legal stuff, but they would just do whatever they wanted. Well, I mean, But he was also at times I've heard more horror stories with women back in the day too, on some of the things that Mike Tyson did. And how can I explain this well? I've seen Mike in the locker room. Let's go there. Wow. I would be frightened too. So I'll just leave it at that.
I think he's implying that Mike Tyson is well endowed.
It would run the other direction and be very afraid.
I certainly wouldn't.
So Ron, and he's actually made statements about this, that he had basically a 3-woman-a-day sex habit before training for fights. Do you think that it's just possible that he was just very tired from having a lot of sexual,
absolutely
relations on the night of that fight, and that's why he lost the fight?
And I'll use Marvin Hagler as my example on this one, who was my favorite fighter to cover here in the day, partly because he was left-handed. I'm left-handed, so I had that affinity. But it was also I just loved his style. I loved marvelous Marvin Hagler's style. But anyway,
Ron, I want to bring up if it's gambling, the gambling aspect of this fight, because you've been in this town a long time, right? So as you know, where you said, depending on where you shopped, 42-1 at the Apex. There were other places that were 37-1. So apparently, the biggest bet on this fight that we know of in Las Vegas. Well, let me talk about the losers first, Ron. Okay, one guy apparently bet $54,000 to win $2,000 on Tyson as a 27-1 favorite. Another guy bet $168,000 to win $4,000 at the Apex. So those are some of the losers.
Money.
Yeah.
Easy money.
Those are some of the losers. Jimmy Vaccaro, who's, as you know, been in this town a long time as a sportsbook manager, he said the biggest bet he took was Buster Douglas, a $1,500 bet, which is a pretty sizable bet at 37-1. So that guy won $55,000. But Ron, how about the guy, you sports bet from time to time, how about the guy who walks into a book and bets $168,000, thinks it's an easy money to win $4,000, and he's not even able to watch the fight because I guess it was on HBO, and what I'm understanding, they didn't show the fight in the books, and then he finds out that he just lost $168,000. I mean, imagine that.
No, that's not even a bad beat. That's just a hell of a horrible beat.
It's horrible.
It's the sense, and because it was automatic. Because the line there was, okay, you compare an investment and go to the stock market. Could you make 4% on your money in a day? No, you couldn't. So this is a great investment because it's automatic. Because nobody thought Tyson was going to lose to Buster Douglas. And I'll go back on the Hagler thing. Hagler used to always say that he would stop having sex with his wife 6 weeks before a fight because, number one, he felt it weakened his legs when he had sex. And this is a theory in boxing, not just Hagler, but he was the first that I ever heard say this. It weakened his legs, and also it made him angry. It made him mean. It made him pissed. He would look at his opponent and say, "You've kept me from my wife for the last 6 weeks. Damn, you're going down."
Hey, most people might enjoy that. I mean, I don't. It depends on the relationship.
That was Hagler's attitude. Where Tyson's attitude was, "I ain't stopping." In fact,
right.
His pre-fight ritual.
So sex weakens your legs? I never knew that.
Hagler said that.
I must not be doing it the right way. I don't know. Usually my legs are okay. I just want a sandwich and I want to go to sleep.
Listen, I've never scientifically researched that. I've never thought about it afterwards. So I don't know if there's a doctor in the audience that would know better. But Hagler,
I think clearly it would depend on position. I mean, clearly.
Yeah, we don't need to go there. Ron's a happily married man. We don't need to go there.
Yeah, it depended on a lot of things, but I guess the way Hagler felt it, the way he did it, it weakened his legs. But I think the second point was probably his bigger point, was that it made him angry.
Yeah,
and the fact that he had probably built up testosterone. I don't know.
That's true. He's backed up. I get it.
Again, a doctor that knows more about this can figure out whether that's true or not. But mentally, it was part of his workout. Where Tyson, part of his workout was just going in there, hitting the speed bag, beating the hell out of it, and just and.
Well, I tell you what,
Tyson is an interesting cat. I like Mike Tyson. He's
absolutely
bipolar in the sense that you never knew which Mike Tyson you would meet. There were times, I'll tell stories where I would go and talk to Mike Tyson, and he would say, "Hey, why don't you take somebody, bring your boys by and have them work out at Johnny Tacos. You can watch the workout, and come over and have a good time and see the workout if you want." And so it'd be that gracious, Mike Tyson. Then other times, I remember one time specifically, we're on. Why you always got to be such a smart ass? Why you asking me those questions? You're such a smart ass when you I tell you something, you're a smart ass. And so we had that sort of, I'll say, relationship in the sense that it was,
Ron,
you just didn't know
Mike,
you were going to get.
Ron, and we're just joining us, by the way, Ron Futrell does a great job, Channel 8. He is the Ron Burgundy of Las Vegas covering sports. He's been doing it forever, and he's awesome at it.
My impersonations.
Awesome. You're awesome, Ron, and you're also one of the good guys in this town. All seriousness, you're a great guy, and you're really good at what you do. So I don't say that about a lot of people, believe it or not. Not that anybody cares what I think, but,
I miss being in there. Can I say this?
Sure.
Guys, Jason, and both of you guys?
Yeah.
I miss being in there with you guys. Even you, Brian. I miss being in there.
We had fun, didn't we, Ron? But you know what? Here's something I always love. Here's something I've always loved about you, Ron, right? We disagree. We are completely on the opposite end of the spectrum politically. But we always, had respect for one another.
It was never personal.
Do you know how many times I have debates or disputes with people politically that are even in the media, and they're just so nasty? We've never gotten to that point, and I'm serious when I say you're one of the best in the business in this town. You're really good at what you do. But Ron, moving forward with this boxing fight, you've covered
Mike. Thank you, Brian, and likewise. Feelings mutual.
I appreciate that, Ron. Checks in the mail. But no, seriously, you've covered Tyson forever. And you know Tyson a lot better than I do. I've interviewed him more after he's retired rather than when he was fighting, because I wasn't here in town. I'm happy for Mike Tyson now, Ron, and let me tell you something, and you could tell me whether you agree with this or not, because you know more than me. I don't think he ever committed rape. I really don't. I know he was convicted, and some people might have a problem with me saying that. I think he literally got screwed over in that case. I think he was surrounded around the wrong people. I think he had rough sex. I do not think Mike Tyson is a rapist. That's number one. Number two, you're right. He did have multiple personality disorder. I think the medications that he's on now have certainly made him a better person. I think deep down inside, Mike Tyson has always been a decent guy. He had some anger issues. He had a tough upbringing. I'm really happy for Mike Tyson. He seems to be doing much better now. He took care of his tax issues. He enjoys his family life. It's a horrible thing what happened to his daughter 10 years ago. That was awful. He's had a tough life, but I'm really happy for Mike. He seems like he's in the best place he's ever been in his life. You think that's accurate?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I would agree with you. I could go, if we got more time, one of these days, the rape case from the early 90s, we can go in details on that, because I did study that case quite a bit. I was even there when he got out of prison and followed him through an Indiana cornfield to try to get an interview with him.
Wow.
Unsuccessfully.
Right.
But
solid effort, though.
The case was on. But no, I agree with you. There was an interview. In fact, I interviewed Mike probably 6 months ago at a legal cannabis dispensary where you could openly smoke. there because it's on Indian Paiute reservation land.
Yep.
So you could smoke there. And so he had this joint, and he's smoking this joint while I'm doing the interview with him. And we're talking about his pot farm and where he's at in his career and that sort of stuff. It's on my YouTube page if you want to check it out, Ron Sports.
I will.
It's me and Mike just sitting there talking about his new venture into the legal cannabis industry and what it is. And I know people, both sides of that debate too. We can debate that if somebody wants to. But anyway, it was good to talk to him. It was good to catch up and talk about some old times and some of the boxing coverage back in the day. It was fun to get here and cover that. Richard Steele. I did an interview with Richard Steele for a fight card coming up this week, Thursday, I think, at the Westgate, that he's partial promoter for. And we were talking about Tyson's first fight here in town in '86 when he won the heavyweight championship. I think it was Tony Tucker at what used to be the Hilton. Now it's the Westgate. And how Muhammad Ali was there. And I remember doing interviews with Ali, and it was the last time I'd interviewed Ali, and how you could see he was starting to have some of the effects of what he was going through, the Parkinson's, that later led to his death. And it was Mike Tyson. They had this Don King set up with this crown. He was the undisputed heavyweight champ of the world, had got all the titles unified, and finally had won the championship. And yeah, it was a fun part of sports history and Vegas history to be a part of that. I feel fortunate that I was around then. I'd only been at that time in town doing sports for 2 years when that fight happened. So I'm a kid. I'm 26 years old, 27 years old.
That's incredible.
And it was fun. That's like, there were times I still pinch myself today.
Yeah. And you know what, Ron? Everyone knows where we were when that thing happened. I was 9 years old watching HBO with my dad. It's incredible. Well, Ron, I always appreciate it when you share your stories with us. And next time you come on, we got to give you a little bit more time because I want to hear more of those Mike Tyson stories. But unfortunately, we're up against a break. Ron, you do a great job. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me on your little show here, Brian. I appreciate it. I tell you something.
With Ron. I love it. Thanks, Ron. You're the best. You're the best, man. Thanks, Ron. I appreciate it. Ron is the best. Of course, now working over there at Channel 8, he does a great job there. So does Chris Matthews, by the way. They're both really good. Channel 8 does a great job covering sports, as does Brian Salmon, my boy over there at Channel 3. Some really good sports people in this town, particularly TV, that I appreciate. And Ron is certainly one of them. Fantastic guy. His stories are unbelievable. Can you imagine if you were like a sports reporter back then in Vegas? Watching some of those fights. How about the Mike Tyson Evander Holyfield fight where Tyson bit his ear off? Can you imagine if you're in press row watching that? I mean, that's insane. And I've had some pretty crazy events in my lifetime here. I remember when Paul George basically almost was an amputee. I mean, at that USA basketball game where he had to have, emergency surgery. That was a crazy moment in Las Vegas. I remember that. And I've had some other crazy incidents, but never have I ever seen anything like a Mike Tyson fight before. And I wish I was able to see Mike fight in person. I was able to watch it on TV, but actually covering it as a member of the media, although I don't think you could cover boxing fights at the age of 9 years old. I think that's probably a little bit too young to have a career in sports journalism. But anyway, so we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Hard Rock. Oh, the Hard Rock no longer exists. And a woman who worked at the Hard Rock, her name is Diana Arnson. She's going to be joining us next to talk about her experiences there. You're listening to The Vegas Tape.